then we'll be good. Well, I say good, but it's still hesitating. A little bit more. Oh, wait, we're getting close. Oh, and I just need to do a little bit of a tinkering there. Go. We go back and turn off the volume because I don't need to hear myself talk because that is incredibly distracting. All right, so I think we are in business. Let me just adjust all the little screens so I can keep track of if people are talking or whatnot. There we go. Okay. You know, in the old days, I had to fiddle with books. Now I'm fiddling with Windows, but it works out. It all works out. All right. Now it's all in place. All right. So good. Well, I guess it's afternoon now. Good afternoon to everyone, or whatever time it is if you happen to be watching this recorded on YouTube. I hope that everybody is doing well. We are continuing our journey through the incredibly exciting and very, very deep sections of the book of Bereshit, of Genesis, which may feel like it is just a meandering narrative of the events happening to Abraham and then Sarah and Isaac and Jacob. But there is so much happening here that it's impossible to cover it all. And as all of you who have studied with me before know, that we don't study it all. We take apart a slice in order to look more deeply than just the surface meaning. Everybody can read the basic text here on Safaria, which is what I use as my general browser for the text. And you can even find a lot of the classical commentaries in English, which is an amazing resource. Please support them. They are an amazing group. I am not they don't sponsor me. I just love the work they do. But digging deep, that requires a little bit more. And that's, of course, what our focus is. But we do need to do a little bit of a backstory because digging deep sometimes means we have to pick up a story in the middle. And here in Genesis 24, we are definitely in the middle of a story. The beginning of Chayei Sarah is detailing the passing of Sarah. She has died, and she needs to be buried, which is in the cave of Machpelah, which is in the city of Hebron, which is still there to this day, approximately 3,000 years later. It's one of the great wonders of antiquity that have continued into the modern time. Obviously a very controversial location, but please see some of my most recent sermons on the situation in Israel if you want more on those topics. Having seen his wife die, having nearly sacrificed his son Isaac at the Akedah on the top of the mountain of Moriah, Avraham is now beginning to think about, the future in a way that he had not yet really wrestled with. He is looking at what Sarah meant to him and recognizing that Yitzchak needs someone comparable. Unfortunately, the women of this generation in this part of the world are, shall we say, lacking in moral quality. This is, after all, the generation of Sodom and Gomorrah. This is the place that God has said that the wickedness of the Amorites is not yet complete. There is no local contender that would be suitable for Yitzchak. And so Avraham does what has been the habit, which is to reach back into the family circle from which he came to try and find an extended family member that would be able to have a child that would be appropriate as a bride for Yitzchak. Unfortunately, Avraham is reluctant to or incapable of leaving the land of Israel. He's already tried twice and it didn't really work out either time with Pharaoh as well as with Avimelech. So Avraham is going to stay put. Yitzchak, he is not prepared to send on his own, and so he has to turn to his servant, Eliezer, to make the travel back to Haran to try and find a bride for Yitzchak. The whole beginning of this chapter details Eliezer's beautiful and plaintive prayer, something we've talked about many times before. So go look through the back catalog of Chayei Sarah videos. And as he is praying and looking for a woman that represents certain qualities, well, we'll review that. Of course, he is met by Rivka, who indeed fulfills all those qualities and then some. And then he realizes that his mission is about to be fulfilled. So we are now picking up here in chapter 24, verse 42, with him talking to her family, because he doesn't only have to get her consent, which he already seems to have implied. He also has to get consent from her family, because that's how betrothals worked in the ancient world. And that means that he has to explain the whole story again. Really, this is the third version of the entail, and try to convince them that they should let Rivka go with him back to the land of Canaan, as it is called at that point, to marry Yitzchak. So let's pick up with his explanation. We're only going to pick up in the middle here because otherwise we would never get to our commentary. So I came to the well today and said, Adonai, God of my Lord Abraham, pray, if you wish to grant success to the journey on which I am going, here I have stationed myself by the water spring. May it be that the girl who comes out to draw, to whom I say, pray, give me a little water from your pitcher to drink, and she says to me, you drink, and I will also draw for your camels, let her be the woman whom Adonai has decided on for the son of my Lord. So that was his basic prayer, setting up a set of test conditions. Again, I've talked about that many times in previous videos, which he then uses to try and determine if this is whom Adonai has chosen for Isaac's wife. And verse 44, I, even before I had finished speaking in my heart, here, Rivka came out, her pitcher on her shoulder, and she went down to the spring and drew. I said to her, pray, give me to drink. And in haste, she let down her pitcher from herself and said, drink, and I will also give your camels to drink. I drank, and she also gave the camels to drink. So no sooner had he finished speaking than indeed, here comes Rivka, and he asked her the question that he was using as the test. And not only did she fulfill it, but she did so with great speed. So now he gets to her, the conversation continuing, verse 46. Then I asked her, I said, whose daughter are you? She said, the daughter of Betuel, son of Nahor, whom Milcah born to him. So I put the ring on her nose and the bracelets on her wrists, and I did homage and bowed low before Adonai, and blessed Adonai, God of my Lord Abraham, who led me on the faithful journey to take the daughter of my Lord's brother for his son. Okay, so a number of things are happening here. One is he is getting the family information about this woman whom he thinks is fitting the criteria. Notice that he is still asking questions, even though he has seen the miraculous fulfillment of his request. He didn't make the proposal in this version until he had gotten a little more information. That, of course, is a slight variation from the events in the text itself, something we'll discuss in the commentary shortly. And notice that he is giving thanks to God, that this is not just a convenience. He is ascribing to this the imperature of the divine. Notice as well that he seems to be trying to say that he came looking for Rivka in particular, the daughter of my Lord's brother, for his son. We did not actually hear Abraham say this was exactly the person that Eliezer was supposed to bring back for Isaac. For some reason, and we'll talk about that, Eliezer seems to think that making it sound like she was the objective, regardless of his particular prayer and petition, is going to be helpful in the discussion with her family. Maybe they are reluctant to let her go just because of a reported miracle. Maybe they would be offended that Abraham had not sent specifically for her. There are a couple of different reasons we might consider. But Eliezer certainly has considered them and seems to be trying to weave them into his retelling. Verse 48. So now, if you wish to deal in loyalty and faithfulness with my Lord, meaning Abraham, tell me, and if not, tell me, that I may turn right or left. So there it is, right? And again, the rest of chapter 24 is very much filled with this longer discussion and outline of the story. So please go back and study that on your own time. But he is now putting it to them. So what's it going to be, right? Tell me. Are you going to agree or are you going to disagree? And if you're going to disagree, then I can turn right or left, meaning then I can make arrangements. And if you're going to agree, then I can turn the right way to head back to the land of Canaan with Rivka. Now, again, this is also going to be confusing as we look into our commentary. If Eliezer truly believes that God has arranged for Rivka to be the wife, is there really an option in his mind for leaving her behind? Is he going to come back to Abraham and say, yes, I met the perfect girl. She was the epitome of kindness and wonderful. But her family said no, so I left. And anyway, I found this other girl, and she seems all right. But is that really an option in his mind, or is he presenting it like an option because he knows trying to speak of without choice would be off-putting, to say the least, to her family? That's something we'll have to hold in our thoughts until we get to our commentary. But let's see what her family says. Lavan and Betuel. Lavan is Rivka's brother, and Betuel is her father. Lavan and Betuel answered, and they said, the matter has gone out from Adonai. We cannot speak anything to you, evil or good. Here is Rivka before you. Take her and go, that she may be a wife for the son of your Lord, as Adonai has spoken. So their answer seems to be, what can we say? They seem to be accepting the divinity of the whole situation, and as such, they are not going to speak about it either for good or bad, meaning that there's nothing they can say that would make it more appropriate because God has arranged it, and nothing they can say that would be against it because God has arranged it. So what does their opinion matter? Instead, yes, here we go, that this is Rivka. You can go because this definitely seems to be a divine situation. It was when Abraham's servant heard these words that he bowed low to the earth before Adonai, and the servant brought out objects of silver and objects of gold and garments and gave them to Rivka, and he gave presents to her brother and to her mother. Okay, so we will leave it there. They begin to have the party. There's a very long leave-taking scene. But I want to focus on this idea that Eliezer, the servant of Abraham, seems to have laid in front of us, that this was divinely orchestrated, and that Lavan and Betuel seem to be agreeing with that to such an extent that they are not even going to pass comment on the idea of this marriage. Instead, simply to say, we are powerless to either help this along or to hinder it. So off you go and let her be married. Okay. Before we get into the commentaries, any questions or comments? If you're on Zoom, as always, feel free to unmute or use the chat. If you're on YouTube, chat is all you've got. A reminder that the chat is slightly delayed through YouTube, so if it takes me a while to see it and catch up to your question, please be patient. Okay, so let's jump into our conversation here. So we have been wrestling with this conversation of how could they agree so easily, and were they agreeing so easily, and why? let's take a look at some commentary about Lavan and Bethuel in particular before we get to the broader question of this arrangement. Then Lavan and Bethuel answered, he, Lavan, was a wicked person, and so rushed in to answer before his father. All right, classically, what is bothering Rashi here? Why is Rashi bringing commentary on this verse? What question is he trying to answer? Well, he's trying to answer, why is Lavan mentioned first? Bethuel, as the father of Rivka, should certainly be the first person to speak. A brother has no right to speak up for the family while the father is sitting right there. As such, by Lavan's name being put first in this list, we can instead feel that he is usurping his father's authority. He is not respecting his father, and this is reflecting his inner character. Lavan is a fascinating figure. We get to see a lot of him, not only here, but also in the next section with Yaakov, of Jacob, as he comes back to Lavan's house. Lavan, of course, has a name which is white, and yet he is a very clouded figure. He is not a good man by most measures. As such, the rabbis are noticing that there are certain hints at his poor character that maybe not obvious to the first reader, but with a little careful review, we can notice them. And this, of course, is not only meant to help us understand Lavan, but we can also take into our own life that if somebody is disrespectful to a member of their family, chances are that is reflective of an inner character flaw that we would do well to be on guard for. That there are very few people that are mean to their family that are good to others. Usually the meanness is more pervasive, even if they can mask it when dealing with others, as Lavan appears to be doing here. And Rabbeinu Bachya echoes Rashi and adds even more. Another indication that Lavan was evil is discernible from the fact that in his remarks, he first alluded to the negative when he said, regretfully, we cannot speak to you negatively or positively. A righteous individual would have reversed the order, saying positively or negatively. Again, a little hint in the speech of Lavan of the way his mind worked, that he was predisposed to reject, to refuse, to not want to acknowledge what had just taken place, the miracle that had unfolded, but he couldn't. And as he gave his answer, that was foremost in his mind. He wished he could be negative. He wished he could fight back against this. He's not a big fan of the whole idea. Probably not a big fan of the test as well, as it was a test of kindness and generosity. But in the face of everything as it's now unfolding, he can't do that. So he mentions the fact that he can't. He wants to speak negatively. He wants to say it's bad, but he can't because, well, it is simply impossible to say in the face of what he is witnessing. There are others that also argue that indeed God robbed him of the ability to speak negatively as much as he might have wanted to. But notice as well that he couldn't speak positively either. He is sort of abstaining entirely, that if he can't speak negatively, he's also recognizing he can't speak positively. His abstention, in a sense, also speaks volumes. However, let it not be said that our tradition is inherently unfair to Lavan. Many voices do try to unpack his behavior in and of itself in a way that might be more favorable in our estimation of him. So Radak takes the opinion, Lavan spoke before his father, meaning spoke first, seeing that Bethuel was an old man and the affairs of the family were already being conducted by his son Lavan. So Radak says, look, don't rush to judgment. We only have a small vignette here. Lavan is not necessarily an evil person that is disrespecting his father by giving his opinion before his father has even spoken. It could just be that, yes, Bethuel was there, but he was so advanced in years and capable of handling the affairs of the family that Lavan had already assumed that role, as was normal in the ancient world, where the son would indeed take over the family affairs when necessary. So let's not rush to judgment, says Radak. Let's instead just say that there was a family dynamic that needed Lavan to speak. All right, now before we get into the meat of this whole situation, the predestination and Lavan and Bethuel's reaction to it, are there any other questions about Lavan and Bethuel's behavior just from the comments we've already gone over? All right, so let's go ahead then and dig a little deeper. And everything is revealed before the Holy One, blessed be He, a daughter of kings, who in all her life had never gone forth to draw water, went out to draw water in that hour. And the girl, who did not know who the man was, accepted to be married to Isaac. Why? Because she had been destined for him from his mother's womb. As it is said, in the balances they will go up, they are together lighter than vanity. Vanity meaning like the pointlessness of parts of the world. Lavan and Bethuel answered, since this word has come forth from the mouth of the Almighty, we cannot prevent it, as it is said. And Lavan and Bethuel answered and said, the thing proceeded from the Lord. We cannot speak unto you bad or good. Behold, Rebekah is before you. Take her and go. So Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer is arguing that indeed, we can recognize the miraculous nature of this encounter when we stop and consider that, according to our tradition, Rivka wasn't just a peasant child growing up in Bethuel's house, that Bethuel was a man of means, that he was a wealthy person and a powerful man in the area, and as such, his daughter would never have gone out to be the water carrier. That was a job that would have been typically beneath someone of her station. Nevertheless, she did. Likewise, it would be absolutely ludicrous to imagine that a woman would accept a marriage proposal from a man she didn't know to another man whom she had never met and just agree to all of that. And yet she did. So how do we understand this? We understand this, that she was destined for Isaac from the womb, meaning that this was her recognizing that the events that were unfolding in front of her were not just pure coincidence. They were not chance. They were not just one of those things, that this was indeed exactly where she needed to be and doing what she needed to do in order that she could go to where she would be able to fulfill that destiny. So Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer is really highlighting that there was a preordination of all of this, that they were fated to be together, and especially important in his commentary, that Rivka seemed to understand that. Alternatively, it could be that Rivka didn't necessarily understand it, but Rivka was obligated to go through it. That is to say that God's orchestration, God's machinations to bring this about may have taken away her free will. That maybe when we say she was destined, and then we look at her behavior, which was so atypical in this scene, maybe what we are seeing is that God was arranging this not as an opportunity, but as an inevitability. And at that point, we do have to scratch our heads and say, well, then, was Rivka actually choosing to do this? And if not, does that mean that destiny can override an individual's choices? That's a theme that we're going to have to continue to wrestle with as we look through our other commentary. And in that light, we can read this section from the Talmud Bavli. It's Masechet Moed Katan, which deals with the whole question of how do we pray for God to help us to be with somebody whom we wish to marry? So Rava heard a man asking for mercy, meaning pleading before God, who said, grant me so-and-so, meaning as a wife. So here's a man and he is praying and saying, God, please, I want to marry, Sally Smith, and please, please, please. Rava says to him, do not ask for mercy in this way, right? That's not the way we pray to God about a person, about a spouse. If she is fit for you, she will not go away from you. And if she is not, you will come to deny the Lord when you see that your prayer is not answered. So what Rava is trying to warn him about is that when you think you know how your prayer needs to be answered, right? God, I want to get married and I want to be married to Sally. When you think that you already know and that you know better than God, then one of two things is going to happen. Either you'll end up with her, but if you end up with her, it's not because of the prayer, it's because that was the appropriate match, or you won't end up with her. And if you don't, then you will argue that God refused to hear your prayers, God has abandoned you, God has rejected you, God has let you suffer because Sally is not your bride. So praying for Sally to be your wife is only has a negative opportunity attached to it. If she is supposed to be your wife, it'll happen without your prayer. If she's not supposed to be your wife, then you're just going to get depressed and angry at God when she turns out not to be your wife, even after your prayers. However, after the man married this woman, so hey, it did work out, Rava heard him say in prayer, either let him die before her or let her die before him. Meaning, as he talks about himself in the third person, basically, one of us has got to die. That life together is so bad that one of us has to die because this is not working out. Rava said to him, did I not say to you not to pray for this matter? So Rava is responding here in something that can have two different meanings. One can be, and that's why you don't pray, right? You wait and you see what happens, and then you deal with it as you can. But don't think that God is going to come along and put you in all of these other situations, and then that God is going to somehow bring you out of the situation through death. You've got this prayer thing entirely wrong, especially when it comes to the relationships that we have with our spouses. This is not the way we pray. And indeed, Rava may be saying that instead, or more so. The rabbis often could say two things simultaneously, which is that it's not just wrong that you were trying to pray before you got married. Now you are uttering an equally ridiculous prayer while you are married. Asking God to kill her or asking God to kill you is also a completely faulty form of a prayer. A prayer should not be involved like that. Just like in the first half, it's not about, I know the right solution, and now God, do what I'm asking. Instead, it is, God, I'm recognizing a problem. Help me find a solution to the problem. If the solution is one of us is going to die, well, then, that is a solution. But you should not be suggesting that as being the prime solution. Perhaps God has in mind another way out, another way for you to be happy together, another way for you to perhaps separate and divorce and be happy with someone else. But to imagine that the one solution that you have hit upon is the only solution that God could provide is an incredibly short-sighted and an incredibly problematic form of prayer. Again, even in the second version here, even if you don't get what you want, meaning you both go on living, then you're going to think that God doesn't listen to prayer because God didn't do the one very specific thing that you thought would be best, as if what we think is best is always going to be what is actually best. So when we pray, we often need to remind ourselves to pray in a way that is open-ended, not pray for X, Y, and Z, but to pray for a general condition, a general improvement, and into suffering, and allow God to help guide us so that we can end up in that better situation, rather than imagining that our list is the exact form of what God must do to remedy all of my requests. And then a continuation on this theme of marriage. Rav said, in the name of Rabbi Reuven, Itz Terobili, as follows: from the Torah and from the prophets and from the writings. So this is sort of a classic way of saying there is proof to my point that shows up in a verse in the Torah, a verse in the prophets, and a verse in the writings, remembering that as that forms the Tanakh, the entirety of the Bible. This is sort of a very strong emphasis that my teaching must be right because I can point to it in all three sections. It's a very powerful bit of evidence. And what is the teaching? A specific woman is destined to be married to a specific man, and that this is from God, right? That there is a destiny when it comes to spouses. What is our proof? It is from the Torah, as it is written. Then Lavan and Bethuel answered and said, the thing comes from the Lord. We cannot speak to you either bad or good. So we hear our father and brother-in-law making that statement. That seems to confirm the idea that there is destiny with marriage. From the prophets, as it is written, but his father and his mother knew not that it was of the Lord. Here we have from the story of Samson that they are unhappy with who Samson seems to be choosing to marry, but it was arranged by God, and therefore, that was the ultimate destiny that was inevitable. And from the writings, as it is written, houses and riches are the inheritance of fathers from our ancestors, but a prudent woman is from the Lord, with the idea, again, that is a particular gift that God can arrange for us, which is independent of our ancestral gifts. So the idea here that Rav is quoting is that indeed the person that we marry is an inevitable decision that has already been created by God. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean we have no choice? Does it mean that even if we think we have choice, we have no choice? And does this really match the going-ons in chapter 24 with Eliezer and Rivka at the well? Because while it is definitely true that Eliezer is looking for a sign of who would be the right woman, the one that God would like to be the bride for Isaac, he still sets up a condition. He doesn't just say, I'm going to invite the first woman I see to be the bride of Isaac. He doesn't say, I'm going to throw some letters in the air, and whatever they spell when they land, that will be the name of the woman. Or I'm going to throw a stick in the air and it will point to the woman. He doesn't choose a random means of divining God's will in this point. Just like throughout our history, we don't see people encouraging a use of some form of divination in order to find the person that we are supposed to marry. We still act with free will, with choice, and with decisions, rather than saying it is inevitable. So there is this tension of how can we say it is from God, yet at the same time say that Eliezer in this particular section took steps to actually find the woman in some way that was not based solely upon divination and omens. For as much as we may say that he was setting a test for God to reveal to him the woman, he was also setting a test about the woman. There was a particular characteristic that he was looking for in the woman, that chesed, that kindness, that hachnasat orchim, that hospitality that he felt would be so important. So as much as this may feel like a slam dunk case for predestination, it is also contradicted in many ways by the text that we've already read. So let's look at a way to try and unpack that. This is coming from a Kabbalistic text, Kedushat Levi, and he brings in a number of different ideas. Now, you may feel that if it's Kabbalistic, then it's obviously going to be on the side of mystical predestination. It is not that simple. So, begins with the quote from the text. And through her, I shall know that you have done a kindness with my master. That was the conclusion of the prayer that Eliezer made. These words of Eliezer have been explained in the Zohar, where the author states that in the time of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, even small children possessed some special wisdom that enabled them to know what others adults do not know. They were endowed by this superior wisdom as part of the spiritual rays, radiating from the saintly personality of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Now, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was the purported author of the Zohar, and the text here is referring to the notion that because of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's great righteousness, because of his incredible spirit, that it influenced other people around him, even including small children, that gave them better insight, better character than they would have otherwise. That there was a beneficial outpouring from Shimon Bar Yochai to the community around him. As it goes on to say, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is quoted as an example of the influence exerted on his environment by every righteous person, each one in varying degrees according to his spiritual stature. So this isn't only Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, but indeed every righteous person has a spiritual effect on the world around him. They are to be perceived as a microcosm of Hashem, of God, who, as the macrocosm, disseminates spiritual influence throughout his universe through his very existence. So the text is saying, look, God, we know, as the ultimate source of spiritual overflow, influences the entirety of the universe. So the entire universe indeed is shaped by God's outpouring of goodness. Well, we humans who also share a spirit, a soul, then likewise we should not be surprised that as a perhaps smaller example, nonetheless still have an impact on the world around us. We could think of this like in the terms of gravity, that a sun has huge gravitational pull. A black hole could have even more gravitational pull, something akin to the ultimate state of God. But even a small planet, even a small moon, even an asteroid, even an individual still also has a gravitational field, a pull on things around them. It's imperceptible if you're very small, but the larger the mass, the more that effect can be felt and measured. Likewise, the larger the righteousness of an individual, the greater the impact they will have on the world around him, the more easy it will be to see. And so that is sort of proposed here in general through the theme of Shimon Bar Yochai and, of course, God. Now we have to take it to the particular. There is no question but that Abraham's major attribute was chesed, this word that usually gets translated as loving kindness, and that he had a profound influence on his immediate environment, not only recognized but paid tribute to by the period of people of Kiryat Arba, that's the town we now know as Hebron, when they described him as a prince of God in their midst, when he was negotiating to buy a burial plot for Sarah. Abraham personified on earth what the Creator personifies in the entire universe, the dispensing of largesse, meaning that this is the giving of goodness, the beneficence, the free kindness that is showered upon the world. Abraham did that as well, just obviously in a much smaller version than God. The idea that Abraham's good deeds spilled over even to such people as Betuel is meant to set our mind at rest over the fact that Rivka, with a father like Betuel and a brother like Lavan, could have been such a righteous matriarch as she clearly was. Okay, let's make sure we understand this, because it's a fairly important answer to a question you may not have had, which is, okay, Rivka, we know, ends up being a righteous matriarch. She is an incredibly strong person. Many commentators have called her the next Abraham, as Isaac represents a different character altogether, but Rivka seems to be doing a version of Abraham's life on her own. She, after all, is going to have the journey from Haran to Canaan the same way Abraham did, and many other parallels as well. We might be surprised that a person like Rivka would come from a family that was from Betuel and produced a brother like Lavan, that we will see in this, or we have seen in this parasha, and even more starkly when Jacob goes to live there, are not good people. So how do we understand that Rivka could be good if her family was wicked? Now that again, that may not be such a startling question to us, where we live in the modern period for the last 400 or 500 years, give or take. We have been obsessed by the individual as the sole atomic unit of identity, and family and community are very much choices and secondary to who we imagine ourselves as being connected to. But for most of our history, that is not the case. For most of our history, indeed most of world history, people were thought to be representatives of their family, and they were thought to share traits with their family, which was not surprising. Many families do share an awful lot, more than just a particular eye color or shape of earlobe. Many families will share the characteristics of either kindness or the lack of kindness. And when we see the starkness of Betuel and Lavan, we have to wonder, where did Rivka's kindness come from? Well, during the meal, Eliezer recounts what had occurred at the well, and anyone who has read the Torah's report of what transpired is aware that Eliezer rewrote some of the history, that is to say, the sequence of events. Rashi points this out in Genesis 24, 47, implying that during the meal, in the presence of Betuel, Eliezer could not bring himself to imply that this man had been endowed with part of Abraham's soul, meaning that he adjusted the narrative, not to curry favor with Betuel, not to assuage any of their hesitancy by how quickly Eliezer had jumped to conclusions, but because Eliezer himself was scratching his head saying, there's no way this guy is actually connected to Abraham. How could he be considered to even have benefited from the spillover of Abraham's soul? This man is such a wretch. And so he massaged things in order to work with the person that he had before him. Now, we have a rule that when a person performs a mitzvah that reflects his attribute of chesed, that is to say, love for his fellow, he awakens parallel waves of chesed in the celestial regions. As a result, the whole world will benefit from the chesed that his mitzvah awakened. So the general theme that Kedushat Levi is trying to bring is that when you do chesed in this world, meaning the material realm, that in the other realm, the celestial regions, usually gets called heaven, but that's not a great word, and really because of the English baggage. But in that other aspect of all reality, beyond reality, that as you perform chesed, you are triggering a response in the heavenly spheres as well. You are increasing the amount of chesed that is being generated. You are making chesed, that kindness, the more dominant feature of that realm, which of course is a benefit to not only you, but to the entire world, because the world thrives off of God's chesed, of God's kindness. So one act of kindness is more than just one act of kindness. It is part of tipping the scales of the universe. Since all of the mitzvot performed by Avraham reflected this attribute of chesed of his, they inspired other people to perform similar acts of loving kindness. Rivka had been enabled, in spite of her extreme youth, to feel the urge to also perform deeds of human kindness. Eliezer prayed to God to let him meet someone who would reflect this wonderful attribute of his master Avraham. He acknowledged to God that if he were to meet such a girl, her actions would show him that she had been inspired by his master Avraham. So what Kedushat Levi is trying to say is that Avraham's behavior in Canaan was of such cosmic import, that it continued to have a rippling effect that, even though it was hundreds and hundreds of miles away, would impact Rivka's own spiritual and self-development, such that she would be inspired by Abraham's actions, even though she had never met him directly at this point in her life. How do we know this? Well, because of what she did. When you see the way she behaves, it is so Abrahamic that we can't help but feel that she was inspired. And when we recognize that Eliezer, when he is trying to consider, how will I know who would be a good bride for Isaac, the theme that he hits upon, the characteristic that he begins to look for, is that of chesed, of that of kindness. So that's not a random one. He didn't say who's the strongest girl. He didn't say who's the prettiest girl. He said who is the kindest of these people. That is not an accident, because he knew that that was not just a habit of Abraham, but that it was such a profound effect of Abraham that it had a spiritual ripple effect that, for the right person, would have also awakened a similar type of character, which of course he found in Rivka. Okay, so what do we make then? Is this destiny, or is this character? Is this Lavan and Betuel standing alongside of God, or are they being brushed aside by God? Is there a choice, or is there not a choice? And the answer is, you're probably still going to have your own opinions on that, meaning that there is plenty for people of different opinions to continue to wrestle with. I would not presume to imagine I can settle this debate in an hour-long discussion, something that has consumed our scholars for a few thousand years. But notice that the two are not necessarily at complete loggerheads. The idea that there is still choice is borne out by the choice of test that Eliezer has, the choice of Rivka of whether or not to respond, and ultimately even the choice of Lavan and Betuel of whether they are going to recognize what is happening as being divine and important or not. There is certainly a part that they are all playing. But on the side of destiny and of fate, also recognize that sometimes our lives are shaped by forces that we cannot see directly. Sometimes opportunities and events will play out with us as characters that we could not have anticipated, and in which we are playing a role that may be shaped by our choices, but that our basic nature may have been shaped in an even more profound way by the actions of others in this and prior generations. We can't simply say, I did everything myself, and we can't say, I don't need to do anything, God will take care of it. Instead, we always will err on the side of, I must be the person I should be. I will look for the inspiration that moves me to be the best version of myself that I can possibly be. And I will trust that while doing so, I will be carried in the waves of God's universe to be in the best place that I can be. I will still have to answer the call when I am there. I will still have to water the camels. I will still need to keep my eyes and my heart open. But those moments will occur thanks to God's shaping of the universe through the ultimate outpouring of God's kindness, that ultimate abundance of God's chesed. And with that in mind, I think we are all in a better place to live and to appreciate the world around us. As I say, I don't feel there's a need for violent struggle between the two opinions. They're not polar opposites. One is merely the comforting knowledge that our choices are being made within a tableau of God's kindness, which means the right choices will, more often than not, continue to lead us in the right place, as long as we don't have the hubris that Rava talked about of imagining that we can pray precisely, but instead look more broadly and see the blessings that are possible. Before we wrap it up, are there any questions or comments? Okay, then let us continue to try and find those moments of kindness that we can create. And we know that the world needs them now more than ever. Be well.